Hello everyone, and welcome to History of the Ancient World. Today we're embarking on an epic journey to explore the fascinating relationship between two of the most powerful civilizations ever known, Rome and Egypt. It's a story filled with ambition, romance, war, and the blending of incredible cultures. So buckle up as we travel back in time to uncover how these two giants shaped each other's destinies and left a legacy that still echoes today. Our story begins long before Rome became an empire. Egypt was already an ancient land, with a history stretching back thousands of years. The pyramids stood as timeless monuments, the pharaohs were considered living gods, and the Nile River was the source of life and immense wealth. Egypt was the breadbasket of the ancient world, its fertile lands producing vast quantities of grain that everyone, including a rising power called Rome, desperately needed. For early Rome, a republic hungry for expansion, Egypt was a distant but tempting prize. It was rich, strategic, and culturally magnificent. The Romans were initially more focused on conquering their neighbors in Italy and across the Mediterranean, like Carthage. But they were always aware of Egypt's immense influence and wealth, governed by the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek royal family ruling Egypt after the conquest of Alexander the Great. The first major interactions between Rome and Egypt were diplomatic and economic. Roman merchants traded for Egyptian grain, papyrus, and luxury goods. The Ptolemaic rulers, in turn, sought to maintain a delicate balance of power, often playing Roman factions against each other to preserve their kingdom's independence. They saw the writing on the wall. Rome was a growing superpower, and it was better to be an ally than an enemy. This cautious dance turned into a dramatic entanglement with the arrival of some of history's most famous figures. First came Julius Caesar. In the midst of a brutal Roman civil war, he pursued his rival, Pompey the Great, all the way to Egypt. But when Caesar arrived, he found that Pompey had already been assassinated on the orders of the young pharaoh, Ptolemy XIII, who hoped to curry favor with Caesar. This move backfired spectacularly. Caesar was outraged by the murder of a Roman consul. He decided to stay in Alexandria to settle the chaotic Egyptian politics, and more importantly, to secure Egypt's resources for himself. It was here that he met Ptolemy's sister, the brilliant and ambitious Cleopatra VII. Exiled by her brother, Cleopatra famously had herself smuggled into the palace wrapped in a carpet to meet Caesar. Caesar was captivated. He sided with Cleopatra in the ensuing civil war in Alexandria, defeating her brother's forces. With Roman military might behind her, Cleopatra was installed as the undisputed ruler of Egypt. But this was more than just a political alliance. Caesar and Cleopatra began a legendary love affair, and she even gave birth to his son, Caesarion. For a brief moment, it seemed a new Roman-Egyptian dynasty could rule the world. After Caesar's assassination back in Rome, Egypt was once again thrown into the heart of Roman conflict. Mark Antony, one of Caesar's most loyal generals, became the dominant figure in the eastern part of the Roman world. He summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus to question her loyalty. But like Caesar before him, he fell completely under her spell. Their partnership was both a passionate romance and a powerful political alliance. Together, Antony and Cleopatra dreamed of a new Eastern Empire, with Alexandria as its capital. They ruled together, had 3 children, and presented themselves as new deities, Antony as Dionysus, and Cleopatra as Isis. This was a direct challenge to Rome and its traditional values. Back in Rome, Antony's rival, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, used this relationship as propaganda. He painted Antony as a man who had abandoned his Roman heritage, bewitched by a foreign queen. The tension exploded into the final war of the Roman Republic. In 31 BC, the naval forces of Octavian clashed with the combined fleet of Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. The battle was a disaster for the Egyptian-Roman pair. They were decisively defeated and fled back to Egypt with what remained of their forces. Octavian's legions pursued them relentlessly. Facing inevitable defeat, Antony took his own life, falsely believing Cleopatra was already dead. When Cleopatra learned of Antony's death and saw that Octavian intended to parade her through Rome as a captive, she chose her own fate. According to legend, she committed suicide by allowing an asp, a venomous snake, to bite her. With her death, the Ptolemaic dynasty, which had ruled Egypt for 300 years, came to an end. The death of Cleopatra marked a pivotal moment. In 30 BC, Octavian, soon to be known as Emperor Augustus, officially annexed Egypt. It was no longer an ally or a client kingdom. It became a personal province of the Roman Emperor. This was a status unlike any other province. The emperor controlled Egypt's vast grain supply directly, ensuring he could feed the population of Rome and prevent any potential rivals from using Egypt's wealth to challenge his power. Roman rule brought significant changes to Egypt. The Romans were masters of administration and engineering. They maintained and even improved the complex irrigation systems of the Nile, maximizing grain production. Alexandria continued to be a vibrant hub of culture and learning, a melting pot of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman influences. The Great Library, though it had suffered damage in earlier conflicts, still attracted scholars from all over the known world. But what about Egyptian culture? Did it simply disappear under Roman domination? Not at all. Instead, something fascinating happened, a process of syncretism or cultural blending. The Romans were generally pragmatic rulers. While they imposed their legal and administrative systems, they were often tolerant of local customs and religions, as long as they didn't threaten Roman authority. The worship of Egyptian gods continued and even flourished. In fact, some Egyptian deities became incredibly popular across the Roman Empire. The cult of Isis, the mother goddess, spread from the sands of Egypt to the streets of Rome itself, and even as far as Britain. Romans were drawn to her promise of salvation and an afterlife. The god Serapis, a Greco-Egyptian deity created during the Ptolemaic period, also gained a massive following. We can see this cultural fusion beautifully in the art of Roman Egypt. For example, the Fayum mummy portraits are a perfect illustration. These were realistic portraits of the deceased, painted on wooden boards and placed over the faces of mummies. The style of painting was purely Roman, naturalistic and lifelike, but the practice of mummification was entirely Egyptian. It was a perfect blend of two different traditions for honoring the dead. Roman emperors even presented themselves as the successors to the pharaohs to win the loyalty of the Egyptian people. On temple walls, you can find reliefs of emperors like Augustus and Tiberius depicted in the traditional style of a pharaoh, making offerings to Egyptian gods. They understood the importance of respecting local traditions to maintain stability. It was a clever political move that acknowledged the deep-rooted power of Egyptian culture. For centuries, Egypt remained the jewel in the imperial crown, providing the grain, wealth, and stability that helped the Roman Empire thrive. However, as the Roman Empire began to decline in the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, Egypt faced its own challenges, including economic instability and religious conflict with the rise of Christianity. Eventually, when the Roman Empire split, Egypt became part of the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire. The final chapter of ancient Egypt's story came in the 7th century AD with the Arab conquest, which brought a new language, a new religion, and a new culture that would shape the Egypt we know today. So, the relationship between Rome and Egypt was not a simple story of conqueror and conquered. It was a complex interplay of power, politics, love, and cultural exchange that transformed both civilizations. Egypt's wealth fueled the Roman Empire, while Roman engineering and administration reshaped Egypt. Their blended religions and art created a unique cultural landscape that remains one of the most captivating legacies of the ancient world. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey through history. What part of the Roman-Egyptian story fascinates you the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to History of the Ancient World for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our past. We'll see you in the next one.